The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber hissed open, revealing a sight that never failed to amaze Captain Jake Morrison. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the curved seating areas, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Some floated in special atmosphere bubbles, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained within crystal shells. Jake walked beside Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, their polished human uniforms standing out against the exotic garments and natural coverings of the other delegates. The weight of representing all of humanity pressed down on his shoulders like a heavy blanket. At the center of the chamber stood Ambassador Kethvar, a towering mantis-like creature from the Vrexian Empire. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's blue lighting like fractured mirrors. Honorable members of the Council, Kethvar's voice echoed through universal translators, we have gathered today to address a growing threat to galactic peace. The humans, despite their recent admission to our community, have shown themselves to be aggressive and unpredictable. Amy shifted beside Jake, her jaw clenched tight. They both knew what was coming, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. Kethvar activated a holographic display that filled the chamber's center. Images of human military vessels appeared, their weapons firing at what appeared to be peaceful alien ships. The footage showed explosions and debris scattered across space, with human ships seeming to attack without provocation. As you can see, Kethvar continued, these humans have violated 3 separate ceasefire agreements in the past month alone. Their barbaric nature makes them unsuitable for civilized space. The Aquarian representative, a sleek dolphin-like creature named Reeftar, nodded his elongated head. The evidence is troubling. These attacks appear unprovoked. Jake stood up from his designated seat. Honorable Council members, I request permission to address these charges. The chamber fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and other perception organs focused on the human captain. The Council speaker, an ancient being that looked like a walking tree, gestured for Jake to proceed. What you've seen is not the complete picture, Jake said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. These recordings have been edited. Our ships were responding to attacks, not initiating them. We have our own sensor data that shows. Sensor data can be falsified, interrupted Kethvar. The footage speaks for itself. Humans are violent by nature. Look at their own history. Constant warfare, destruction of their own planet's environment, exploitation of weaker species. Several alien delegates made sounds of agreement. The crystalline Zephyrites chimed like wind bells, their way of showing approval. A group of gas-based beings swirled faster in their containment fields. Amy leaned forward. We request time to present our evidence. What you've seen doesn't show the full context of these encounters. The Council speaker's bark-like skin rustled. The evidence presented by Ambassador Kethvar is clear and comprehensive. Multiple independent sources have confirmed these incidents. Jake felt his heart sink. Those independent sources were likely Vrexian allies, but proving that would be nearly impossible without access to the original sensor logs. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what Jake recognized as satisfaction. I propose immediate action. Humans should be banned from all contested sectors. Their military vessels should be prohibited from entering any disputed territory for the next 50 standard years. That's unreasonable, Amy protested. Many of our colonies are in those sectors. You're talking about cutting off supply lines to millions of people. Perhaps, said the Aquarian delegate, humans should have considered that before engaging in unprovoked aggression. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds, clicks, whistles, hums, and electronic tones. Some species were clearly in favor of the ban, while others seemed uncertain, but Jake could tell which way the vote would go. One by one, the species cast their votes using their various methods. The Vrexians gestured with all 4 arms. The Aquarians sang a low note. The Zephyrites flashed different colors. Each vote felt like another nail in humanity's coffin. When the final tally was announced, the result was devastating but not surprising. The ban passed with an overwhelming majority. Only 3 species abstained and none voted against it. The Council speaker's voice boomed through the chamber. By the authority of the Galactic Council, all human military vessels are hereby banned from entering contested sectors. Human civilian ships may pass through with proper escorts from approved species. No new human colonies may be established in disputed territories for 50 standard years. Jake and Amy sat in stunned silence as alien delegates around them began to chatter excitedly. Some were already discussing how to divide up the territories that humans could no longer access. "This is a dark day for galactic justice," Amy whispered. Behind them, Jake heard Kethvar talking to a group of Rexian subordinates. The mantis-like aliens weren't bothering to whisper, confident that their language wouldn't be understood by the humans. But Jake had spent years learning alien languages, and he caught fragments of their conversation. Words like trap, easy prey, and isolated colonies sent chills down his spine. As the session ended, Jake and Amy were escorted from the chamber by council security. The hallways buzzed with conversation as alien delegates discussed the implications of the ban. Some seemed genuinely concerned about the harshness of the punishment, but most appeared satisfied with the outcome. "Captain," Amy said quietly as they walked, "did you hear what the Vrexians were saying?" Jake nodded grimly. "Enough to know this isn't over. They're planning something, and the ban just gave them the perfect opportunity." Outside the council building, their transport waited to take them back to the human embassy. As they climbed aboard, Jake looked back at the towering structure where humanity's fate had been decided by beings who barely understood them. The ban was more than just a restriction on human movement. It was a declaration that humans didn't belong in the galactic community. But Jake had a feeling that the aliens who had voted for this punishment were about to learn something important about human nature. Humans didn't give up easily. And when cornered, they could be far more dangerous than any alien species had ever imagined. The transport lifted off, carrying them away from the council chambers and toward an uncertain future. But Jake Morrison wasn't planning to accept defeat. He was already thinking about what would come next. 3 months had passed since the council's decision, and the ban had already started affecting human colonies across the galaxy. Supply runs took longer, trade agreements fell through, and several frontier settlements reported strange communications problems. Administrator Lisa Parker stood in the main control room of New Denver Colony, watching the morning shift change through the large viewing windows. The mining operation on Kepler 442b had been running smoothly for 5 years, providing rare Earth elements to dozens of human worlds. The planet's 3 moons created beautiful sunrises that reminded her of home. "Ma'am, we're getting some interference on the long-range communications again," reported technician Sam Cooper from his station. The young engineer had been working overtime trying to fix their communication problems. "Same as yesterday?" Lisa asked, walking over to examine his readings. "Worse, actually. Whatever's causing it seems to be getting stronger." Sam frowned at his displays. "It's like something is actively jamming our signals." Security Chief Ryan Mitchell looked up from his morning reports. "Could be solar activity. This system's star has been acting up lately." Lisa wasn't convinced. The interference had started shortly after the council ban, and it followed patterns that seemed too regular to be natural. But without proof, there wasn't much they could do except file complaints with the Colonial Communications Authority. "Keep monitoring it," she told Sam. "If it gets worse, we might need to send a courier ship to carry messages manually." The colony housed nearly 50,000 people. From miners and engineers to teachers and doctors, most had been there for years, building lives far from Earth. The thought of being cut off from the rest of human space worried Lisa more than she let on. That afternoon, the colony's early warning sensors picked up something that made Lisa's blood run cold. A fleet of unknown ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, moving toward Kepler 442b at high speed. "Ryan, get up here now," Lisa called over the intercom. When Mitchell arrived in the control room, his face went pale as he looked at the sensor displays. 12 large ships, clearly military, were approaching their planet. The computer was already analyzing their design patterns. "Vrexian Empire signatures confirmed," announced the colony's AI system. "Estimated time to planetary orbit, 4 hours, 23 minutes. Get me a communication channel to the lead ship," Lisa ordered. Sam worked frantically at his station. "I'm trying, ma'am, but the jamming is blocking everything. We can barely reach our own mining stations, let alone deep space." Lisa felt a chill of realization. The communications problems hadn't been random interference. Someone had been systematically cutting them off from the outside galaxy, isolating them for exactly this moment. "Ryan, what are our defensive capabilities?" she asked quietly. Mitchell pulled up security protocols on his tablet. We have basic shields and some mining lasers that could be weaponized. But against 12 military ships? He shook his head. We're a mining colony, not a fortress. Could we evacuate? Not in 4 hours. We'd need days to get everyone off planet. And our transport ships are designed for cargo, not passengers. Lisa stared at the approaching fleet on the main screen. Each Vrexian ship was 3 times larger than anything the colony possessed. Their weapons could reduce New Denver to rubble in minutes. Keep trying to break through the jamming, she told Sam. Someone needs to know what's happening here. As the hours passed, the Vrexian fleet entered orbit around Kepler 442b. The lead ship, a massive dreadnought with 4 weapon pods, took position directly above the colony. Lisa had seen ships like it in military databases. They called it a destroyer of worlds. Finally, a communication came through from the Vrexian fleet commander. The transmission was crystal clear, proving that the aliens had complete control over local communications. The holographic image showed a Vrexian officer, his compound eyes glittering with satisfaction. Human colony, this is Fleet Commander Zexicon of the Vrexian Imperial Navy. You have violated treaty agreements by maintaining an illegal presence in disputed space. This colony has been here for 5 years, Lisa replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We have full documentation from the Colonial Authority. Human agreements are no longer recognized in this sector. You have 1 hour to begin evacuation procedures, or we will begin orbital bombardment. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the control room in stunned silence. 1 hour? Ryan said. They know we can't evacuate in 1 hour. This isn't about treaty violations. They want to massacre civilians. Sam looked up from his station, his face pale but determined. Ma'am, I've been analyzing the jamming signal. It's definitely artificial, and it's been in place for 3 weeks. Someone planned this, Lisa nodded grimly. They've been isolating us, making sure no one could come to help when the attack began. She walked to the window and looked out at the colony below. Children played in the parks between the residential blocks. Families were having dinner together. None of them knew that alien warships hung above them like swords waiting to fall. Keep trying to break through the jamming, she ordered. Someone needs to get word out about what's happening here. Meanwhile, 50 light-years away, Admiral Kate Sullivan paced the bridge of the UES Defender. Her fleet of 8 ships patrolled the edge of human space, maintaining the boundaries imposed by the Council ban. Admiral, we're picking up some fragmentary signals from the Kepler system, reported Communications Officer Grace Bennett. It's mostly static, but the computer thinks it might be a distress call. Kate stopped pacing. From New Denver colony? Yes, ma'am. But the signal is too weak and broken to make out details. Admiral Sullivan stared at the tactical display showing her fleet's position. They were stationed exactly at the boundary of the restricted zone. The Kepler system lay just inside the area where human military ships were banned from entering. Ma'am, said Commander Alex Turner from his station, regulations are clear. We're not authorized to cross into restricted space. Kate knew the rules. Breaking the ban could mean court-martial, imprisonment, and the end of her career. But if New Denver was in trouble and asking for help, could she really stand by and do nothing? Keep monitoring those signals, she ordered, and prepare the fleet for possible emergency action. Ma'am, are you considering entering the restricted zone? Kate looked at the boundary line on her display, an invisible barrier that stood between her and potential disaster for 50,000 human beings. I'm considering my options, Commander, and praying we don't have to make an impossible choice. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, staring at the communications display that showed broken fragments of distress signals from New Denver colony. The signals were getting weaker, but the desperation in them was clear. Admiral, I'm picking up stronger signals now, reported Grace Bennett, her fingers flying over the communications console. It's definitely a distress call. They're reporting orbital bombardment in progress. Kate felt her heart clench. 50,000 civilians were under attack, and she had 8 ships that could help them. The only thing standing between her and a rescue mission was a line on a star chart, the boundary of the restricted zone. Commander Turner, what's our status? Alex Turner looked up from his tactical display. All ships ready for immediate departure. We could reach the Kepler system in 6 hours at maximum speed. And our orders? To maintain position and not enter restricted space under any circumstances. Kate closed her eyes for a moment, weighing her options. She could follow orders and let innocent people die, or break galactic law to save lives. It wasn't really a choice at all. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," she announced over the fleet communications channel. "We have a humanitarian crisis in the Kepler system. Prepare for immediate departure." "Ma'am, entering restricted space could mean—" Turner started. "Could mean what, Commander? Court-martial? Prison?" Kate's voice was steel. "I'd rather face a tribunal than live with the deaths of 50,000 people on my conscience." She turned to her communications officer. "Grace, send a message to Earth Command. Inform them we're responding to a distress call and will face the consequences later." Within minutes, the 8 ships of the human fleet were racing toward the Kepler system at maximum speed. As they traveled, more details came through the communication static. Vrexian ships were bombarding the colony, and the colonists were fighting back with mining equipment and sheer desperation. When they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, Kate's tactical display lit up with enemy contacts. 12 Vrexian ships surrounded the planet, their weapons firing down at the surface. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the colony's defensive shields. "All ships, battle formation," Kate ordered. "Target the ships bombarding civilian areas first." The human fleet spread out using the system's asteroid belt for cover. Commander Elena Foster led a squadron of fighters from the carrier ship Valiant, while Lieutenant Dan Phillips coordinated with ground forces on the planet below. What happened next shocked the Vrexian fleet commander. Instead of charging straight into battle like the barbaric humans were supposed to do, the human ships used tactics that the aliens had never seen before. The fighter squadron led by Elena Foster used the asteroid field like a 3-dimensional maze, popping out from behind rocks to fire at Vrexian ships before disappearing again. The aliens' superior weapons were useless if they couldn't get a clear shot. Meanwhile, the main human ships worked together in ways that confused the enemy. When a Vrexian dreadnought targeted the destroyer Phoenix, the ship didn't try to outrun the attack. Instead, it used its shields to deflect the energy beams toward another human ship, which had positioned its own shields to bounce the attack back at the attacker. "They're using our own weapons against us," reported a shocked Vrexian weapons officer to Fleet Commander Zexcon. On the planet's surface, the colonists fought with equipment that was never designed for war. Mining lasers became artillery. Construction vehicles became tanks. The underground tunnels that carried ore became a defensive network that allowed the humans to strike and disappear like ghosts. Lieutenant Dan Phillips coordinated the ground defense from a command bunker deep beneath the colony. Team Alpha, hit the landing zone near the processing plant. Team Beta, use Tunnel 7 to get behind their ground forces. The Vrexians had expected to fight a standard battle against human military ships. They hadn't planned for a war against an entire population that refused to give up. Admiral Sullivan watched the battle unfold from the Defender's bridge. Her ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but human creativity was turning the tide. The Vrexians had better technology, but humans had better tactics. Elena's squadron just took out another cruiser, reported Turner. They're using cargo containers as improvised missiles. Kate smiled grimly. Leave it to humans to turn garbage into weapons. But the Vrexians had one advantage that Kate hadn't counted on. Their fleet commander was recording everything, planning to use the battle as evidence of human aggression. In Zexcon's mind, this was perfect. The humans had violated the galactic ban, and now he had proof of their violent nature. What he didn't know was that Chief Communications Officer Maria Santos had been recording too. Every Vrexian transmission, every tactical communication, every order to target civilians was being captured and stored in the Defender's memory banks. As the battle raged, Admiral Sullivan received a priority message from Earth Command. She was ordered to withdraw immediately and report for court-martial. The message was copied to the Galactic Council, making it clear that her actions were not authorized by human leadership. Kate deleted the message without responding. There would be time for consequences later. Right now, people were dying, and she was the only one who could save them. The turning point came when Elena Foster's fighter squadron discovered something important. The Vrexian ships were using a centralized command system. If they could take out the command vessel, the rest of the fleet would be temporarily blind and deaf. Admiral, we found their weakness, Elena reported over the communications channel. Give me 5 minutes and a lot of luck. You've got it, Commander. All ships cover Foster's approach. What followed was one of the most daring attacks in military history. Elena's small fighter weaved through enemy fire, using debris from destroyed ships as cover. She flew straight at the massive Vrexian command ship, launched her missiles at point-blank range, then used the explosion to hide her escape. The Vrexian command ship didn't explode, but its communications array was destroyed. Suddenly, the enemy fleet couldn't coordinate their attacks. Individual ships began making mistakes, firing at each other, failing to cover their weak points. The human fleet pressed their advantage. Within an hour, 3 Vrexian ships were destroyed and 4 more were badly damaged. The remaining vessels began to retreat toward the edge of the system, but Fleet Commander Zexcon wasn't finished. As his ship limped away from the battle, he activated one final weapon, a recording system that had captured everything. In his mind, he had perfect evidence of human aggression that would convince the Galactic Council to ban humanity from space forever. What he didn't realize was that Maria Santos had been recording him too, and her evidence would tell a very different story. 2 weeks after the Battle of New Denver, Captain Jake Morrison found himself walking through the halls of the Galactic Council building once again. This time he wasn't alone. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked beside him, her uniform bearing new scars from the recent battle. Behind them came Administrator Lisa Parker, who had survived the orbital bombardment of her colony. The emergency session had been called by the Vrexian Empire, and Jake knew exactly what they planned to present. Fleet Commander Zexcon had been boasting about his evidence of human aggression for days. The council chamber was packed with representatives from across the galaxy. News of the Battle of New Denver had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to see how the situation would be resolved. Some species clearly supported the humans, while others seemed ready to condemn them. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he had done months earlier. His compound eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he activated the holographic display system. "Honored members of the Council," Kethvar announced, "what you're about to see proves that humans are a threat to galactic peace. Despite our clear ban on human military presence in contested space, they violated our trust and attacked innocent Vrexian vessels. The hologram showed footage from the Battle of New Denver, but only certain parts. It showed human ships firing on Vrexian vessels, human fighters attacking what appeared to be peaceful cruisers, and explosions that made it look like unprovoked human aggression. As you can see," Kethvar continued, "the humans ignored galactic law and launched a surprise attack on our peaceful patrol fleet. This barbaric behavior cannot be tolerated." Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the chamber. Many of the alien delegates shook their heads or made sounds of disgust. The crystalline Zephyrite flashed angry red colors while the Aquarians clicked their displeasure. Jake felt his hands clench into fists. The footage was technically accurate, but it told only part of the story. None of it showed the Vrexian bombardment of civilian targets or the 3 weeks of communication jamming that had isolated the colony. The council speaker, the ancient, tree-like being, gestured for quiet. "This is indeed serious. Admiral Sullivan, you were commanding the human fleet during this incident. How do you explain these actions?" Kate stood up, her back straight despite the accusations against her. "Honorable Speaker, what you've seen is not the complete picture. We were responding to a distress call from civilians under attack." "Lies," hissed Kethvar. "Our ships were conducting peaceful patrols when humans attacked without warning." "Then you won't mind if we present our own evidence," said Captain Morrison. Standing beside the Admiral, the chamber fell silent. Every alien eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on the human delegation. Jake could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. The council speaker's bark-like skin rustled thoughtfully. "The council will hear your evidence, but it had better be compelling. The footage we've seen appears quite clear." Jake activated his own holographic display, and suddenly the chamber was filled with new images. These weren't edited highlights. They were complete recordings of everything that had happened in the Kepler system. The first thing the council saw was the Vrexian fleet dropping out of hyperspace and immediately moving to attack positions around New Denver colony. The timestamp showed this happened hours before any human ships arrived in the system. Then came the recordings of Vrexian ships bombarding civilian targets. Residential areas, schools, hospitals, all under attack from orbital weapons. The aliens in the chamber watched in shocked silence as children's playgrounds exploded under enemy fire. But the most damning evidence came from the communication intercepts that Maria Santos had recorded. The chamber's universal translators converted the Vrexian language into dozens of alien tongues, making sure everyone understood what they were hearing. Phase 1 complete, came the voice of Fleet Commander Zexcon. Colony isolated from outside communication. Begin Phase 2, bombardment of civilian targets. Another voice responded. Should we target military installations first? No, civilians first. We want the humans to break their ban to save their people. Then we'll have evidence of their aggression. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. Clicks, whistles, electronic tones, and gasps from species that had breath to gasp with. Even the usually calm council speaker's leaves rustled with agitation. But the evidence wasn't finished. Lieutenant Sam Cooper, now promoted after his heroic work during the battle, stepped forward with technical analysis that proved the original footage used to justify the human ban had been edited. Honored council members, Sam said, his voice shaking slightly with nervousness. These data files show the complete sensor logs from the original incidents that led to the ban. The Vrexian footage removed crucial context. The holographic display showed side-by-side comparisons. The edited versions that the council had seen months earlier showed human ships attacking seemingly peaceful alien vessels. The complete versions showed those same alien ships firing first, often at human civilian transports. Every incident used to justify the ban was a case of humans defending themselves or protecting civilians, Sam explained. The attacks were edited out of the recordings to make us look like aggressors. Ambassador Kethvar's mandibles clicked frantically. This is fabricated evidence. Humans are trying to deceive the council with false data. Admiral Sullivan stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying the authority of someone who had faced death and won. Every piece of evidence we've presented has been verified by independent analysis. The timestamps, the energy signatures, the quantum resonance patterns, all of it can be confirmed by your own technical experts. Captain Morrison added, We've also brought witnesses. Administrator Parker can testify about the 3 weeks of communication jamming that isolated her colony. The pattern was too regular and too specific to be natural interference. Lisa Parker stood up, her face showing the strain of someone who had watched her home burn from space. 50,000 civilians were used as bait. The Vrexians jammed our communications to make sure no one could warn us or send help. Then they attacked our children to force our military to break the ban. The Aquarian delegate Admiral Reeftar spoke up for the first time. If this evidence is accurate, then the Vrexian Empire has violated the most fundamental laws of civilized warfare. Targeting civilians is forbidden under galactic law. The Zephyrite representative, a being made of living crystal, flashed rapid patterns of color that the translators converted to speech. These recordings suggest a pattern of deception spanning months. How many other incidents have been misrepresented? Other species began reviewing their own border disputes with the Vrexians, wondering if they too had been victims of manufactured evidence. The chamber buzzed with dozens of conversations as delegates shared their suspicions and concerns. Ambassador Kethvar tried desperately to regain control. The council should not be swayed by human trickery. They are known for their deceptive nature. But Captain Morrison had one final revelation that would change everything. He smiled grimly as he activated one last recording. This one from the council session where the original ban had been imposed. Honored council members, remember when Ambassador Kethvar said he had independent sources confirming human aggression? We managed to identify those sources through traffic, analysis of galactic communication networks. The holographic display showed a network diagram with communication lines connecting various points across the galaxy. Every single independent source that had confirmed the Vrexian evidence was connected to the Vrexian Empire through hidden communication relays. There were no independent sources, Jake said quietly. It was all part of a coordinated deception designed to isolate humanity and seize our territory. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had been manipulated into punishing innocent humans, while rewarding the real aggressors. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from dozens of species were on their feet, making sounds of outrage and disbelief. The crystalline Zephyrites flashed angry reds and whites. The gas-based Nebulon collective swirled violently in their containment fields. Even the usually calm plant-like species rustled their leaves in agitation. Ambassador Kethvar stood in the center of it all, his compound eyes darting frantically as he tried to find support among the alien delegates. His forearms gestured desperately, but his usual confidence had crumbled like sand. "The evidence is fabricated," he insisted, his voice rising above the chaos. "Humans are master manipulators. They're trying to make us believe their lies." The council speaker raised one massive branch-like arm, and the chamber gradually fell quiet. Ancient and wise, the tree being had presided over the council for over 2 centuries, and his judgment was respected throughout the galaxy. "Ambassador Kethvar," the speaker said, his voice like wind through old forests, "do you deny that these recordings are authentic?" The recordings may be real, but they're taken out of context," Kethvar stammered. "Our actions were justified responses to human aggression." Admiral Reeftar, the Aquarian delegate, made a sound like an angry whale song. 3 weeks of communication jamming? Targeting civilian areas first? There is no context that justifies such actions. Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward. "Honorable Speaker, there's something else the Council should know. This wasn't just about framing humanity for aggression. We discovered something much bigger during our investigation." Jake activated another holographic display. This one showed star charts with highlighted systems, trade routes, and resource deposits. All of them were in areas where humans had been banned from operating. Every system that humans were forbidden to enter contains valuable resources or strategic positions, Jake explained. Rare Earth elements, hyperspace junction points, habitable worlds perfect for colonization. The Vrexians didn't just want us blamed for aggression. They wanted us out of the way so they could take what we'd found. Lieutenant Sam Cooper added technical details. "Our analysis shows that Vrexian survey ships visited these systems within days of the ban being imposed. They were already planning to strip mine the worlds we'd discovered. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. The Vrexians hadn't just deceived the Council. They'd manipulated galactic law to steal territory and resources from humanity." The Zephyrite delegate flashed rapid patterns of light. "If humans had remained banned from those sectors, the Vrexian Empire would have gained control of resources worth trillions of credits." Administrator Lisa Parker spoke up from her seat. "My colony alone sits on rare Earth deposits worth enough to power a dozen worlds. That's why they needed us gone." Ambassador Kethvar's desperation became obvious to everyone in the chamber. "This is all speculation. You have no proof of our intentions." But Admiral Kate Sullivan had been waiting for this moment. She activated her own display, showing detailed analysis that her intelligence officers had prepared. "Actually, we do. During the battle at New Denver, our ships intercepted internal Vrexian communications. They weren't just talking about military tactics, they were discussing mining rights and colonization schedules for human systems. The recordings played for the entire Council to hear. Vrexian voices discussing how to divide up human territory, which worlds to strip mine first, and how many colonies they could establish once the human problem was permanently solved. One recording was particularly damning. It featured Kethvar himself, talking to other Vrexian leaders about the final phase of their plan. Once the Council votes for complete human banishment, came Kethvar's translated voice, "we'll have access to their entire territory. The other species are too civilized to take advantage, but we understand the value of aggressive expansion." The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the Vrexian deception became clear. They hadn't just wanted to frame humans for aggression, they'd wanted to eliminate humanity as competition for galactic resources and territory. The Council speaker's leaves rustled ominously. "Ambassador Kethvar, these recordings appear to be from your own communications network. How do you explain them?" Kethvar's compound eyes darted around the chamber, looking for any ally or escape route. Finding none, he fell back on the one strategy that had worked before. "The Vrexian Empire rejects these charges," he declared. "We withdraw from Council proceedings and reserve the right to defend our interests through other means." It was exactly the wrong thing to say. Several species that had been neutral suddenly shifted their support toward humanity. The threat of Vrexian military action against the Council itself changed everything. Admiral Reeftar rose to his full height. "The Aquarian Federation formally apologizes to humanity for supporting the unjust ban. We request immediate military cooperation agreements to counter Vrexian aggression." The Zephyrite delegate flashed agreement patterns. The Crystal Collective also apologizes and offers alliance with humanity. One by one, Species that had voted for the ban began switching sides. They offered apologies, alliance agreements, and support for immediate action against the Rexian Empire. But Captain Morrison wasn't finished with his revelations. He had saved the most important discovery for last. Honorable Speaker, there's one more thing. The Battle of New Denver wasn't just a rescue mission. It was also a test. The chamber quieted as Jake continued. Humans suspected Rexian manipulation for months. We've been quietly gathering evidence, preparing for exactly this moment. The attack on New Denver gave us the opportunity to record everything and prove our case. Admiral Sullivan nodded. We knew that breaking the ban would be seen as aggression, but we also knew that the truth would come out during the investigation. Sometimes you have to break unjust laws to expose the real criminals. The council speaker considered this for a long moment. You're saying that humanity deliberately provoked this crisis to reveal Rexian deception? We're saying that humans protect what's ours, Sullivan replied firmly. We protect our colonies, our people, and our rights. When someone tries to manipulate galactic law to steal from us, we fight back, but we fight smart. The voting that followed was swift and decisive. The ban on human military activity was lifted immediately. Sanctions were imposed on the Rexian Empire. Several species voted to expel the Vrexians from the Council entirely, but the most significant vote was for a new mutual defense treaty. Humanity was no longer seen as aggressive newcomers to be contained. They were now viewed as valuable allies who had exposed a major threat to galactic stability. As the session concluded, Admiral Sullivan was asked to address the Council one final time. She stood at the center of the chamber, looking at hundreds of alien delegates who had learned something important about human nature. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, humans don't start fights, but we sure as hell know how to finish them. We protect what's ours, and we never forget our friends or our enemies. She paused, looking directly at the few remaining Vrexian delegates. The Vrexian Empire thought they could manipulate you into destroying us. They underestimated humanity, and they underestimated you. We're all smarter than they gave us credit for. Her final words became legendary throughout the galaxy. Humans are loyal friends and dangerous enemies. The Vrexians chose to make us their enemies. Now they get to live with that choice. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, the Vrexian Empire found itself isolated and facing potential military action from a coalition of species they had tried to manipulate. Their grand plan to eliminate human competition had backfired spectacularly. The humans who had been laughed at just months earlier were now the most respected military advisors in the galaxy. The species that had voted to ban them were now competing to sign alliance agreements. And somewhere in the depths of space, Vrexian Fleet Commander Zexcon received word that his empire was now at war with half the galaxy. The footage he had planned to use as evidence of human aggression had instead become proof of his own people's crimes. The trap had indeed been set, but it had caught the wrong prey. Humanity had turned the tables completely, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.